Hello, Global Health Solution present heart rate variability HeartQuest analysis, and this case studies we perform and we want to see and analyze the improvement during the treatment process. So first one we see, so when we record the electrocardiogram, so we see some abnormal QRS complex. And we see it's kind of like M shape, so this will give us information of a bundle branch block. So we see it's abnormal R wave, and we see the T wave is kind of like inverted. So this will give some information what is going on the electrical conductivity on the heart. So when we start, so basically it's October 29, and we see all the parameters is running low. So we want to see how this improvement and what part is taking over. So the second one, so we're looking for, so the heart rate we see, so it's around 70, and then so we want to monitor, so the heart rate is not changing, so we're still in the green zone. But we see, so the RR interval is changed from the beginning, and then so this is what the last was. So we see it's only just a 3 pyramid, and then so the absolute moda is way high than it's supposed to be. And then comparing to over here, so we see it start on the green zone. So let's scroll down and see in a little process. So when we start treatment, so it start dropping down, and it's kind of like we see some improvement. So from the beginning, and then so the same with autonomic nerve index. So when we start, it was, see, it's kind of like a tight cloud scattergram, and autonomic index of the heart rhythm was very low, 0.12. So when we perform some treatment, so it starts rising to the 0.14, then it's 0.20, and then 0.22. So this is what we see, some improvement on autonomic nerve regulation to the heart rhythm. So this is what are kind of like important. So then we're going to more see how pi and how this frequency spectrum on a frequency analysis, how they will change. First, we're looking for the high frequency, low frequency, and very low frequency. So when we start up, so we see, so if we're only just comparing the high frequency and low frequency, in this case, so we see it's a predominant 27% high frequency comparing to the 70% low frequency, and we making sometimes wrong in conclusion, because if we only just kind of like comparing to high frequency and low frequency, we see, oh yeah, it's good, so the client have a high parasympathetic input. But actually, if you not analyze the VLF, this will give you some wrong information. So this is very important to see the whole pictures, the presentation of the frequency level, the stress index, and vitality. So when we start up, so we see, so 27% high frequency, but the body is going, it's a 430, so stress index is very high. And like we explain over here, so in this case, so when it's high, it will give us the hint, so it's probably adrenal insufficiency. So this why, so it's kind of like kicking up a little bit high frequency higher, and it start kind of like rising the VLF. So this is what I kind of like we want to see. And during the process, when we kind of like perform the therapy, so we see how they will start changing. So first we notice, I mean, like, so it's kind of like will increase a little bit of LF, and the stress index is dropped a little bit. Vital force is kind of like going up. So this will give us information we are on the right path. So we just continue the therapy. Then we look on another one. So we still kind of like will see, so the ratio is kind of like 18 to 21, so it's almost 1-to-1, but the vital forces start rising and the stress indexes start kind of like dropping down. So this will give us some information, so we are in a good path. And then so comparing to the last one, so a lot of people will thinking, so when we do the therapy, so we directly increasing the high frequency, but actually it's not. So the basically first one, so we the VLF is start lowering and increasing LF. What this means, so we going from the central nerve regulatory system to more balance into the autonomic nerve system balancing. So this is why, so we want to see VLF will start dropping down, like in this case, and increasing a little bit LF. And so this is what it kind of like we want to see. Well, comparing to this and this, we see it's kind of like a little shift, but the body is performing, and this why so the vital forces start dropping a little bit, and autonomic nerve system balance is comparing to the previous one and this one, so it's kind of like a little bit high. Even the stress indexes was increasing almost like a 10. So, but I mean, this is kind of like index of centralization will give us a little bit more hint, so showing up so that the index of centralization taking from the overrided central nerve regulatory system regulation to more balance, so we are in a green zone. So this is very important to kind of like we'll look the progress and how we can interpret the results and see even so that some numbers is dropping because the body needs some extra energy to perform this healing process. Then we'll look over here on the neurohormonal matrix. So when we start up, so we see it says the neurohormonal HPA axis distortion was 200, and then so the neurohormonal matrix is only just 10. Look on the energy parameters, it was very, very low, 47. And then during the treatment, so when we perform, so it starts rising, the energy parameters start rising, and then so the HPA axis start dropping. The HPA distortion start dropping. So this is kind of like a good information, so we see it's kind of like we'll start performing. And then so comparing the previous one and what's today, so we see it's HPA axis distortion dropped from 177 to the 140. So it's much better than it was the previous one. Let's look on the brain electrical activities. First of all, so we want to kind of like go and see so how the brain, so we see some improvement, even just the numbers will showing up. So the brain activities from 10 rise to the 38, and the brain intoxication from negative to the positive, which is kind of like will give us information, so the brain is working much better. And so this is what a kind of like a brain activities is showing up. So the alpha and beta frequencies start rising, and this will give us information, so the brain is start working. But if you're looking on the brain neurotransmitters, so you still have the issue. So the GABA and the serotonin constantly running a little bit low, and the dopamine is kind of like running a little bit low. Well, we're going to a level of biorhythm coherence, so it's kind of like increasing from 13 to the 40s. And then so if we will comparing to kind of like how they changed during this process, so we can see, so we start with 13 and then it slowly increase. When the first time we saw the patient, so his age was 60 and biological was 68. And then so when we performed the therapy, so it start biological age is start close to what's the real age. And then so after performing few therapy, so we see it's kind of like decreasing the biological age. Next we were looking for the comprehensive analysis, which is kind of like we see it's an improvement. So before it was less than average people, and then after so it's much better than average people. Then we want to look on the biorhythm daily forecast. So this will give some information. It's still showing up the pattern, so that in the evening time and night time, it's still kind of like overriding, so it's kind of like a little higher than it's supposed to be. In the normal, so it's supposed to be early in the morning it's going high, and then during the day stable, and during the evening time, so it's kind of like trying to kind of like lower up a little bit, so the brain going and all neurohormonal regulation is going to the more relaxing phase and then more anabolic phase. Then we're looking for inflammatory index in the minerals spectrum, minerals and hormonal ratio spectrum. So when we start, so it was very high, it's almost like a 1241, and then so when we perform the therapy, so it start dropping. And then if you look on the mineral ratio, it's constantly showing up the potassium deficiency, and this is what I kind of like we notice over here. The T wave is inverted, so something is affecting the phase of repolarization membrane. So this is what they kind of like will give some information possible. The potassium supplementation will be helpful to restore the T wave and restore the process of repolarization of the cell's membrane. Next one, we're looking for how this energy is distributed through the meridian. First of all, so we want to see what's the actual, how much the energy is circulating through the meridians. So when we start up with was the 315, and then it will slowly increase to the 900, and we can see so which meridian so was kind of like changed during this process. We see so the kidney and the gallbladder is almost like constantly will showing up. Kidney and the liver, kidney and the gallbladder, so showing up some depletion, and then finally so it's kind of like start normalizing the energy in the meridians. This is what we see over here. So when we start up, so the kidney energy in the meridian is very low, and then it's increasing during the process of the treatment. Looking on the energetic plexus, so it was low when in the beginning, and then it's well increasing during the process. So this is kind of like will give you information. So we are on a right path. So it looks like the client is reacting on a treatment, and we are actually increasing the energy on an energetic plexuses. On the three doshas, which is kind of like we see how this one is. So we see so the pitta is basically is kind of like don't have enough fire, so it's still showing up. So the adrenal support is still need to be kind of like helping up to balance the three doshas. And so this is quick overview of the parameters, and this is very important. So sometimes people see a different electrocardiogram signals, so that's why so you have to kind of like recognize. And again, so if you need to increase, so you right click, mouse click, and then push the arrow up, so you can see the complexes, the P complex, QRS complex, and T, and we see it's kind of like ST segment is a little bit lower, and the T wave is kind of like inverted. So this is very important to monitor, and it needs to be taking attention to the cardiologist, so to see how we can, because if it will produce more blockage, so it maybe will be a little bit dangerous. So this why so you have to referral. If you don't know how to deal with this case, so you have to referral this to the cardiologist for more advanced treatment. This is overview of the parameters and how we can interpret the information from the heart rate variability. Thank you very much.